Hi everyone, this is Paul here from the Magdalene Centre. Today I'm doing an astrology report for Mercury Retrograde, which begins on the 7th of July and finishes on the 31st of July. And I'll be outlining some of the key lessons and themes that the retrograde highlights and giving an overview of what it all means. Before I do that, I just want to clarify, as I always do, that the astrology doesn't control our lives. It gives us a framework to help us understand what's unfolding around us, helps us to recognise where the opportunities for growth are and the kind of lessons we can be learning at this time if we choose to embrace the lessons. But for anything to actually change or for us to gain anything from the astrology, it requires that we work with it, that we take action at the right time and allow wisdom to guide us as to when to take the right action and when to hold back. And it's making sure that it is wisdom that guides, not egoic impulses, so we don't create karma through the choices that we make. Now, in terms of Mercury retrograde, before I go into the details of it, I just want to explain a bit about Mercury, as it were. So Mercury direct and Mercury retrograde represent two parts of the same thing, if you like. So when Mercury is direct, this is when we tend to be in a state of attention, so we're focusing what's immediately in front of us. There may be a fair bit of thinking, but it's about focusing what's immediately around us, and generally that not much going on in terms of reflection unless we're consciously choosing to reflect on what's happening as we're going along. But this is a time where we tend to try and analyse things and put them into boxes. But during the Mercury retrograde, this is when Mercury shifts more to awareness. It's moving beyond the kind of need to separate and catalogue everything, and instead become more aware of how everything is actually interconnected. So this is a time where the more right brain perception comes into play, if you like. So during the Mercury retrograde, the more analytical functions take a bit of a backseat. It's a bit like giving that part of the mind an opportunity to rest, because like daily life, we need time to sleep to allow the mind and body to recover. Mercury retrograde is equivalent of that for the left brain functions. It's about slowing right down and becoming more reflective and reassessing what we're doing at the moment and reevaluating the goals that we're pursuing. And it's also time for producing activity of slowing right down and focusing on being more present in our lives and being more receptive to the information that went into the unconscious mind, but bypassing the conscious mind in the past few months. And it's an opportunity to become more aware of the issues that we've overlooked, become more aware of the bigger picture, and to see what information that we haven't consciously acknowledged that potentially changes our understanding of our current situation. Now, in terms of this particular Mercury retrograde, it's transiting two signs. It's beginning in Leo and backtracking into Cancer. So in terms of the key dates during this retrograde, so it starts on the 7th, and Mercury will be backtracking through Leo up until the 19th of July. From the 19th of July till the 31st of July, Mercury continues to backtrack through Cancer. But on the 21st of July itself, this is when the Sun and Mercury will conjunct one another, marking the midpoint of the retrograde and effectively the start of a new beginning, if you like, and a key shift in the nature of the retrograde. So in terms of the first part, when Mercury's going backwards through Leo, this is a time where it's about slowing down and becoming more aware of the creative processes in our minds, and specifically become more conscious of where we may have creative blocks through trying to adhere to external demands, if you like, or not being in touch with our own creativity and our own ability to play. So this is a time where, if for whatever reason we struggle to be expressing ourselves freely or to be in touch with our inspirational side or our creative side, this is a time to kind of reflect on that, to slow right down and try and incorporate more play into life. It doesn't mean that we become irresponsible or we don't fulfill whatever key responsibilities we may have in our lives, but it's about learning to be more spontaneous, to allow ourselves to enjoy the pleasure of creating without worrying about artificial standards of beauty, if you like. And it's also freeing up our understanding of creativity and moving it beyond the narrow parameters that we may attach to it. So believing that we're only creative if we're good at drawing, if we're good at music, good at writing. Creativity comes in all kinds of forms and styles, and each one of us has that creative potential within us. We all have that creative spark, but for whatever reasons, especially if we're someone who tends to be by the book or always focused on fulfilling duties at the expense of engaging any fun in life, then it's time to kind of slow down and re-engage this side of the mind. But this is important to remember that it's about slowing down at this time. It's not about necessarily starting anything new, but it's about spending time in reflection, of spending time in that stillness and being present with oneself. Because creativity comes from the core of our being when we silence the mind and give the right brain functions, if you like, free rein to just play, to express, and to try out new ideas or new inspiration without worrying about quality or how other people receive it. It's about that raw creativity and authenticity. But as I said, this is in the first half of the retrograde, so it's all about focusing on slowing down and not making any major decisions at this time. It's more about slowing down and clearing out, of letting go of old emotional hang-ups, old creative blocks. But this can only really be done by focusing on being present with ourselves, being present in our lives, and wherever possible spending time with ourselves in contemplation, reflection, and seeking to just focus on being present within ourselves and not worrying about tasks to perform or anything like that. It's about any external movement or external activity that we can bring to a pause for the time being. We need to seek to do that. So the more we can foster stillness in our lives through letting go of any unnecessary activity and focusing on purely what is important, so making sure that the normal day-to-day roles or activities that we need to do to keep things running are performed, but it's about being more aware at the same time and to make sure that we remember to cross the T's and dot the I's at all times. Because when Mercury's retrograde, it can feel like everything goes a bit haywire, but the extent to which we experience this is down to the extent to which we feel a conflict within ourselves where we're resisting the changes that Mercury retrograde is trying to highlight to us. If we resist the change, then there will inevitably feel like chaos to ourselves, especially if we're operating from the ego as opposed to the higher self. It's about stepping back from the ego and stepping back from the ego's need to control everything and have it operating in a very orderly way, the way the ego likes it. And instead it's stepping back into the deeper self, the true self that sees everything as it is and allows us to connect with our intuition and see things from a broader perspective, see how everything is interlinked and see everything in a holistic way rather than a segmented kind of manner. So if we do experience any chaos, it's important that we pause for a moment, we breathe, and we check ourselves to see if the frustration we're experiencing is down to the fact that we're resisting the change that our true self knows needs to be made in order to live the life that is right for who we are. So during this Mercury retrograde, it's important to allow things that don't really serve a purpose, but we've done out of habit, to be let go of, to make space for the seed of new beginnings when the Sun and Mercury retrograde conjunct one another on the 21st. Now from the 19th of July onwards, Mercury will be backtracking through Cancer. So Cancer being the water sign, this is all about the emotions, it's about our psychological motivations for doing things, and Cancer is also related to the past. So with Mercury retrograde, this is through Cancer, this is an ideal time to work on letting go of old hang-ups, letting go of old attachments to the past, and it's about being very mindful of when we experience things like anxiety or a tendency to overreact emotionally, and it's also looking at where is our psychological traits been inherited or been adopted based on who we were in the distant past, and it's also looking at recognising, because sometimes we may find ourselves encountering people who represent part of our past that no longer resonates with who we are. It's not necessarily a judgment of the other person. They may just be from a part of our lives that no longer resonates with who we are, but the person may bring a lesson, as it were, at the same time. They may highlight in some way an aspect of ourselves that's still stuck in the past, or that we haven't quite let go of. It doesn't necessarily mean that we'll have a negative reaction to the person or anything like that, but it's important that if we do meet old faces, as it were, that we don't just rush into things straight away, or we don't make any immediate assumptions. It may be that this person represents an old chapter in life that we're ready to close once and for all, and this is a time for taking more responsibility for our emotional side, to learn to have more, I guess, self-control over the emotions. Now, this does not mean emotional suppression. It's not damning the emotions or trying to put them in a box or seal them up tight. It's allowing them to flow and allowing us to show us where we haven't yet let go of something from the past, and we need to, in order to live more in the present moment. Now, as I mentioned, on the 21st, the Sun and Mercury will be conjunct one another. So the Mercury-Sun conjunction is very similar to the new moon, except it's the Mercury phase, if you like. So this is a time where, especially if we've been doing the clearing out work of the first half of Mercury retrograde, where we let go of anything that doesn't serve, and we acknowledge the wisdom of going with the flow rather than trying to make things happen the way the ego thinks it should, then we effectively create space in our lives for the seed of a new beginning. Now, with this being in Cancer, this particular new beginning may well revolve around living a life free of old past conditioning, of letting go of old ways of doing things, old habits, old attachments, and a need for security through clinging to the familiar. And instead, it's about letting go of all of that through being present in our lives and learning to observe the emotions and acknowledge when situations around us are serving as a teacher to show where we still have old hang-ups or old attachments that cause suffering and keep us stuck in the past and stop us moving forward. Now, in the second half of the Mercury retrograde, this part is where, after the conjunction, we may suddenly start feeling that desire to start taking action again. But so this is the time when the old advice about don't make any major decisions, try and avoid signing any important paperwork if you can help it, and make sure you cross the T's and dot the I's with everything you do, because this particular phase of Mercury retrograde can be experienced as a more impulsive kind of energy. It's more about trying to create new beginnings that the Sun-Mercury conjunction highlights to us. So it's important that we don't rush into any action. It doesn't mean that we don't take any action at all, but this is a time where it's better off gathering information. So if during around about the 21st, when we have the Sun-Mercury conjunction, we focus on being still, reflective, and seeking to understand the kind of new beginning that's being sown through engaging the intuition rather than trying to analyse it to death with the left brain logic. This is more about going with the flow and trusting the intuition side of the mind. But this is a time where whatever seeds of new beginnings or new projects that resonate with us are being highlighted to us, this is where it's about gathering the information. It's about the research element of Mercury retrograde, of doing thorough research of different possibilities, of seeing, exploring different methods of attaining new goals, and daring to break free of old tried and true methods and seeking to explore the unknown. So it's about the balance between taking new actions that break free of the old ways of doing things, but also maintaining caution and humility in the process. So it's about taking slow, steady actions to test the new ideas and gather the information together that will give us a more thorough understanding of what this new product is that will help us grow going forward and help us live closer to who we really are, not who the ego would have us think that we are. So this is a time of information gathering, of researching different aspects of whatever project we're seeking to create, but not making any concrete decisions yet, because we haven't got all the information. It's about gathering as much information as possible and exploring new avenues that we haven't tried before, but again, not rushing down any one of them headlong. It's about taking that slow, measured action and trusting the intuition and seeking the wisdom that will guide us. If we can focus on this aspect of the Mercury retrograde very closely at this time, i.e. don't rush into anything straight away, take slow, steady steps, make sure that whatever idea that we're doing has some kind of solid foundation to it, and gather the information that will allow us to best take the right course of action, if you like, when Mercury does turn direct on the 31st. So this is the preparation phase for the project starting proper after Mercury's turned direct. So the more we can stay in the present moment, to keep slow to write down and trust the intuition's guidance at this time, but at the same time gather as much information as possible pertaining to the goals that our intuition's highlighted to us is what we need to be working on at this time in order to empower the next stage of our journey. Because this then will set the stage for the next about 6 to 7 weeks or so, up until the point where the Mercury and the Sun have the next conjunction, except Mercury's behind the Sun instead of the front of it, where we start to reap the rewards of what we've been creating. So it's very important that we be as mindful and aware as possible during the Mercury retrograde, and when we have that conjunction between the Sun and Mercury, we take that time out to slow it down, be present, and potentially meditate on what new projects would resonate with who we are and would allow us to break free of old ways of doing things and allow us to empower ourselves going forward through that creative process and daring to try something new without really worrying too much about the end result, as it were. It's more about the process, because it's in the process that we learn and gain wisdom from it. So it's a time of creative endeavour after the midpoint, but making sure that we do things slowly, that we do take things steady and cautiously, so we don't make any rash decisions that could undermine what we're trying to create. It's going with natural timing, not the timing that the ego would have us go for. So it's about going with the intuition, going with the flow, and seeking out any information pertaining to the goal that we're trying to achieve that will enable us to be in a good position to get the project up and running once Mercury turns direct. So the more we use this stage for the preparation and the planning, the less likely we are to be stuck when Mercury goes direct in terms of not knowing what to do, and the less likely we are to make any rash decisions, because we're seeking to get as much information as possible so we can see as much of the picture as possible and make the wisest choice based on the full information, not just snippets of information. Because if we don't seek to seek the high truth or seek the most accurate picture through gathering as many different bits of information as possible pertaining to the goal, we'll likely end up pursuing the wrong path because we've made a choice before information was made available to us. So it's trusting the process, it's allowing the information to be presented to us, and in the process, with it being in Cancer, it's about empowering ourselves through the shedding of the past, of being conscious of when old emotional patterns come up around things like anxiety or tendency to emotionally overreact. Is about slowing things right down, and to be present with the emotions and be in the witness state of them. Because cancer is also about that foundation, that emotional resilience, that emotional stability that enables us to face the challenging obstacles towards that stand in the way of any worthwhile goal. So if we really want to achieve these new goals being presented to us, we have to have a solid foundation, and we must also take full responsibility for our own psychological underpinnings, but also recognise when there's, our tendency or our emotional patterns or ways of reacting have effectively been inherited from past conditioning, and as a result it's not really our stuff, it's stuff that we've inherited, but we all have the capacity to let go of it if we so choose to, but that can only come about through being present. And it's through being present that the high natures of cancer, like the unconditional nurturing, the selfless giving, within reason of course, can flow through, because we no longer take things personally. We don't take other people's actions or words to heart. We have that emotional resilience, that capacity to avoid being triggered by the environment, and instead become internally empowered through taking full responsibility of our internal landscape, of having that capacity to, when something happens that feels like it's going to trigger emotions, to take that step back, to see things from a wider perspective, to take that breath, to diffuse the energy welling up through the emotions, and to calm the mind down before the thoughts start triggering old emotional patterns. And through this we can shed the past, and we can empower ourselves to pursue any new goals that we want to achieve from a position of reinforced self-belief, that capacity to take ownership of ourselves and have that faith in our own inherent worth in life, that we don't need other people to validate our sense of self-worth. We trust that our life has inherent meaning, it has inherent worth and inherent value, and that every single one of us is worthy of that love and belonging that cancer often seeks. But for us to actually reach that realisation, we often have to undo emotional programming, to be present with what comes up during this time, and let go of old emotional hang-ups, old emotional patterns, old dysfunctional beliefs that we may have inherited from or taken on board in childhood but no longer resonate with who we are. This is a time to clear out the past, to make that space for a new empowered future to be possible through living in the present, because it's in the present moment that we bring that future into being. So the more we can be present during this time, to avoid any unnecessary activity that would potentially derail progress, and spend at least some time each day in stillness and reflection, to allow space to be cleared in the mind and allow the true self to guide us as to what new beginnings we should be working on at this time, so that the ego isn't involved. It's not trying to subvert the new growth or keep us playing small. So being still and being present with ourselves allows us to maximise the end results of this process. So that's useful guide for Mercury Retrograde. There's quite a lot to take on board there. But the key thing to remember is slowing right down and spending time in stillness each day wherever possible. It's about getting in touch with our creative side again if we've suppressed it for whatever reason, and it's engaging that playful nature, that embracing spontaneity and the capacity to enjoy the pleasures of life rather than seeing everything as a chore and everything as a duty. We need to have that time to slow down and relax and to be spontaneous in life. And it's also a time of clearing out the psychological basement, of clearing out emotional conditioning, emotional patterns that served us when we were very young but don't serve us now, and through focusing on being present in our lives and allowing the intuition to guide us at this time, so going with the flow and allowing the creative ideas and new beginnings to well up from within us. We then create in a position where we can maximise our growth, we can become as empowered as possible, and we can create a new life for ourselves based on this realisation of who we really are and the goals that will bring us true fulfilment not just ones that we think we should be doing because they're socially sanctioned, as it were. So hope the Mercury retrograde brings you many new insights and an opportunity to break free from the past and let go of the old, and to make space for the new in your life. And may this be an opportunity to experience exciting new growth and time to try out new things you may not have tried before, and to just experiment and enjoy life, and get that preparation in place for any new projects highlighted to us during this period that will empower us going forward if we take the action at the right time. But initially, do the preparation work so that when Mercury does turn direct, we can hit the ground running, because we've already done some of the work, but we've not tried to initiate anything outside of natural timing. So may Mercury retrograde bring you many blessings and your insights. Take care.